Welcome to This Team is Killing Us, a podcast about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. She is Lauren Brownlow. I am Demetri and Lauren. What is killing me today is some unnamed virus that is going around my house and has us all on quarantined any Thanksgiving plans. The kibosh got put on them quickly, and I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of glad.
Oh, interesting. I'm surprised because I know how into the holidays you are.
Yeah, I like, look, my house is already decorated for Christmas. I enjoy all of the festivities. I just prefer it all with a group of 4 people as opposed to an extended family and or friend group.
Yeah, I get that too. I mean, my holidays, I feel like shrink every year as it is. So, which is fine. I mean, again, I don't know. I sometimes miss it because like if someone's annoying you, you have a better chance of being able to get away from them in a larger setting.
Sure.
But
I don't know.
You also like now that you have kids, it's like easier to not be in the larger group setting too. So
right. I don't know about you. Like I grew up with, even though I only have one sister, my mom has 3 sisters and multiple cousins that were all in Alabama. So we never had a holiday that was less than like 25 people. And now like I want nothing to do with that shit. I want you all to stay in your own homes and send me a text message. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean, it was similar. Yeah, we grew up with the cousins and doing that whole thing, and now they all have their own families, and so it's like it's actually like way too many people, literally, just to get together in one space. Because like, and even some of my cousins' kids have kids, and so it's like the whole thing. You know, it's like, whoa, okay, this is too much. It's too many people. But yeah, I mean, I miss it sometimes just because it was a lot of times it was a good time, and I got some of my best naps in that space. Believe it or not, I have a nap respect family.
Sure.
So
it's yeah, man, that would have completely changed my outlook on gigantic Thanksgiving if we had a group nap, but that was not allowed at our family holidays. All right, so you're hearing this a little bit early this week because we did want to get it out before Thanksgiving, and because Lauren, we're just a tad early. I know we like to say like my post-game video, your column, that's the post-game stuff, and we want to look forward on the Thursday show. But I wanted to jump in on like some reactions to my post-game video because I think it does sort of set the table going forward. I had a lot of people in my comments that could not fathom how I could have anything negative to say about this game. I said that I thought the Panthers left this game on the table. And I think that it is hard for some people, given where this team was, to accept that it is possible for 2 conflicting things to be true, to accept that there are moral victories for this team, and they absolutely left that game on the table.
Yeah, I don't think that's unfair. I mean, I guess the one slight pushback I would have maybe is just the way that Patrick Mahomes does that to literally everyone.
Oh, sure.
But there were chances before their last drive to like have put more points on the board or whatever. So like in that sense, yeah, I mean, I don't think that's unfair to say that there was, I mean, I remember all the frustrations I had the several times they got in the red zone and couldn't score a touchdown. That was hard.
And that's the thing, right? Like the 2 places we saw major progress. Bryce is obviously the headline, but I think the pass rush made, and the defense in general made huge progress, but it was also those same units or same, let's call them units, that sort of let you down at times. Like in the beginning of the game, all the progress Bryce had made seemed like it was only good for 90 yards. And as soon as they hit the 10-yard line, he was back to panicky Bryce. Now, that obviously got better throughout the game, but had that been different early, you know, that could have changed the outcome of the game. The other one is as much improvement as the defense made, and I hate to single out a dude because when a team like the Panthers is playing a team like the Chiefs, you know, you need everybody playing at top level to have a chance to win, but it's hard not to pin this on J.C. Horn. I mean, 2 holding penalties, a pass interference that turned what was going to be a field goal attempt into another touchdown. Like, it was just really frustrating to watch.
It feels a little more fair with him considering like where he was drafted, how much experience he has relative to some of the guys back there.
And also in this season, he's kind of become the vocal leader of the defense, or at least he's the guy that the media is going to for perspective on what's going on.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always kind of felt like I needed and wanted more from him, you know, whether it was like, staying on the field to begin with or whatever, like, and so to have him be that guy that's kind of like making the mistakes, that was hard because you're like, hey, you should know better. But I also kind of see it as like he had a tough assignment.
Oh, sure.
They get those calls a lot. I'm not saying they were fake. I'm just saying like they do get those calls a lot. I mean, I literally saw at one point twice, and it is what it is. Look, we saw this with Tom Brady. It is what it is. And at least Patrick Mahomes isn't as dislikable as Tom Brady. So it makes it all easier to handle. But to literally see them like ask for a call and get it very late, I was like, no, if you didn't see it, they don't get to just ask. And one of them was bullshit. And it was like, you just gave that call because he asked for the face mask. He didn't. Like, come on.
Yeah, and the one you are talking about is the one where literally before the flag is thrown, like there is a close-up on CBS of Patrick Mahomes putting his hand up in the air, like, aren't you going to do something about this?
And the smug smile he had after. I have always liked Patrick, and I still like Patrick. Sure. But I wanted to punch him in that moment. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? And then like, because I do think some of the stuff with the Chiefs stuff is a little overblown in terms of the ref stuff. I don't even think some of it is as bad as like the Patriots stuff was at times. But however, that those two were bad. Like, you don't get to just stand up and be like, where's my flag, sir? Like, what a brat. I could not.
So I'm a bigger NBA fan than I am an NFL fan. So I have always, even if I don't think this is fair, I have always been aware of the stars get the calls, right? And so 100%. 9 times out of 10, that is not going to bother me. That, Mahomes being able to put his hand up and say, do something about it. But coming off,
it was the face he made, though. I didn't like it.
So not only is it there is a certain I'm going to say heel turn, even though that is not 100% accurate. There is a certain embracing being the villain he has done this year, or being the guy everyone's chasing. Probably is a better way to say it, that he's done this year. And also coming off of just the worst illegal touching penalty I've ever seen in the Alabama-Oklahoma game the night before. Like, I had zero patience for referee fuck-ups in this game. But I do want to give credit where it's due. Like, for a couple of the things that went against the Panthers that left you shaking your head, and for all of the Panthers being Panthers moments in the first half, they were in that game till the end. And I think that is something to be proud of.
Overall, I didn't have a lot of issues with the officiating beyond those moments. Like, I didn't, there wasn't a whole lot else that happened that I was like, oh no, like there's usually in a game like that, I feel like there are way more moments where I'm mad, but I wasn't.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said it like that, because like when I put this on JC Horn, like I literally put it on JC Horn, like DeAndre Hopkins was clearly in his head. Like, you saw this on some of the close-ups after their back and forth. Like, DeAndre Hopkins would keep jawing even as JC Horn was walking away.
This was not, in my opinion, an OBJ Josh Norman situation. Yeah. That was a situation where I thought OBJ crossed several lines in that game, and it was not cool, and like should have been ejected, in my opinion. But this is just like he's getting under your skin, and like he's like the little brother that's like that starts it, and then you hit him, and then they're like, "Don't hit your brother," and you're like,
"You know what it is? You know what it is?" This dawns on me as you're saying it. Wasn't DeAndre Hopkins in his last year at Clemson as JC Horn was breaking into the starting lineup at South Carolina? Like, these guys probably have a history of being the two most talented at their position and just going at it with one another. I do, coming out of that game, obviously Bryce is the headline. I wanted to ask you about the column you wrote this week compared to a lot of what Ovius and Giglio have been pointing out, because on their show, because it was weird to see Joe Ovius tweet out that he sort of agreed with what you wrote, that Dave Canales showed some real belief in Bryce Young, because Joe has been saying a lot that for Dave Canales, the worst thing that could happen is Bryce have this kind of game and be stuck with him for another year. Again, this is one of those things where I think it's possible for two things to be true, but where do you come down on the idea of Canales believing in Bryce versus being resigned to Bryce?
Yeah, look, I get it, because I think we literally just saw two coaches essentially treat Bryce that way, particularly Frank Reich. Like, it was as egregious as we've ever seen it at that point, of like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, why are you calling plays this way? Like, it was like they were shaving points. Like, it was just insane what they were doing. But like, at the same time, I think there's a difference between trust and developing that between like a coach and a player. And like, I don't know that he's such a positive guy in general, Canales, that unless he's a complete phony deep down, I really doubt that think about some of the quarterback reclamation projects he's embarked on in his career. I find it hard to believe that he would ever find any quarterback, even a guy like Bryce, and say, this guy's never going to be the guy for me. So fuck it. Like, I'm just going to, resign myself to whatever. That just doesn't strike me as the type of guy that he is.
Right.
Like, at least that he projects to be, right? Like, I could see him being a guy that's like, you know what? There's some issues here. I don't know about if I trust this there, but like, we're going to work with this. And I don't, like, by the way, if Bryce Young has had a therapist, I feel like he needs to advertise that man or woman, like that person, because like whatever his mental switch was, I think has been flipped. And I don't know that he's a coach that's like rolling his eyes behind the scenes at Bryce, and because you can feel that energy.
Yeah.
When you have a boss that doesn't believe in you, you feel that energy, even if they're saying all the right things to you. And so I would doubt that Bryce makes that mental progress we've seen if Dave Canales behind the scenes, even just to himself, is like, this guy's not my guy. He doesn't strike me as the type that would give up hope like that on anybody, considering the way he's turned guys around in the past, especially.
It does make me wonder, this last game, especially the second half, made me wonder if there are still things like, look, literally at the beginning of the season, before the benching, there were things that Dave Canales, even if he believed Bryce could be the guy, if he believed everything he was saying in the offseason, there were things he believed Bryce could and could not do, right? Like, I think that is pretty clear. I come away from that game wondering if he still has those hangups.
I don't know that he does. And this was last week was the first time that I have felt like Canales is ready to like fully trust Bryce again after the way it started. Because look, I do think that coming into the season, at least in the beginning, at least until that first series. Now, you want to think I'm being dramatic, but I think we saw Bryce's demeanor in the first series this year against the Saints. We saw how off he was and how like rattled he looked and everything else. And so for me, like I've always said, I get why it took Dave Canales some time to want to trust Bryce again.
Absolutely.
But when you saw him, and so like I understand why there were more reins on him after that, because it was like, okay, he's clearly like not right. And so once he benched him for a while and he got it back together, I also understand why it took time for that trust to build back up. I thought it took Dave a little long. But I still, he did get there. And you could tell by the way he called plays early in this game that he was at that point. I mean, it was honestly to the point where I was screaming for them to run the football. And you know that I haven't always been in that place. And it wasn't because Bryce was playing poorly. It was just because I was like, Chuba, hey.
Well, that's what I mean by I wonder how much of the, Bryce can't do that is still in there, because there were times he was trusting Bryce to the detriment of the Panthers moving the ball down the field, hanging on to the ball for longer. I mean, look, I think the Panthers only ended up punting twice in this game. Nobody had a turnover in this game. So let's give credit where it is due. But there were obvious times to run the ball, kill some clock that they just didn't take advantage of. And I wonder if a little bit of that is that big sigh of relief. And look, this goes against football logic. This is purely human. I wonder how much of it was the big sigh of relief of, I might have a quarterback again. Because even before Bryce was put back in the starting role because of Andy Dalton's injury, it was clear he had lost faith in Dalton.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like in the pass game in general, I agree. And I think that there is truth to that. And I think But like, yeah, there were times where I was like, okay, you might be putting too much on him now. Okay,
Right.
let's ease up. But it was interesting. I think the first moment I realized last week was different was actually that play where I think they put out an extra offensive lineman, and Bryce was able to, like, I forget who he completed it to on that play, but they even pointed out, they're like, oh, he brought in the lineman to give him time to find, for the route to develop. And I was like, okay.
So they did that twice in the game. I know one of them was the touchdown to Moore, right? Oh, you're talking about the first half. Okay. The second one was definitely the touchdown that Moore had.
Yes, the second one was that, but the first one was sometime in the first half. I think it was just a big play downfield. It wasn't a score. But it was like, oh, they gave and I'm like, okay, this is not only him trusting Bryce, but it's also him putting Bryce in a much better position to be successful. And I think you saw a much better, I hope people saw the reasons that I have been encouraged here and there with Dave Canales is like, he calls plays sometimes that you're like, wow, he really put everybody in a position to like be successful there and like did something cool and something that the defense wasn't expecting. And I think that's so important in today's NFL where I feel like offense has become a challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah, for our OG fans newsletter, Joe Ovius, when he and I talk business, he always likes to say that it's okay to make mistakes because we're building the plane while we're flying it. And I think there's going to be some of that to Dave Canales' head coaching career. Because remember, this is a dude that only called plays for 1 year. And I do think that going from being an OC to the head coach and the OC with nobody pushing you to stay aggressive, nobody pushing you to, hey, pull back on the aggression. We need to burn some clock. It's going to take some learning on the job. I definitely got more frustrated with him than you did at the lowest. If he's willing to come back around on Bryce, I think all of us have to be willing to come back around on Dave. I do think it is interesting that this is the first time you have seen him out of that game so enthusiastically say Bryce was going to be the starter in this next game. And I'll tell you why that piqued my curiosity is because maybe Dave has had more control of this all along than we gave him credit for.
Yeah, or that we gave Tepper credit for, to be fair, the other Dave. But yeah, I think that's a good point. And, maybe that is true. And I think I'm with you. I think for me, look, I've been a Panthers fan my whole life. And so I have seen so many unimaginative, vanilla offensive coaches in my life. And so, yes, there's the hot man bias for me. I've talked about it, but there's also the guy who wants to call cool plays bias. And you can't teach a coach that doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Whether it's coordinator or coach, you can't teach them to have that mentality. And so to have a coach that has that, I would rather work with that and see what we can develop that into in terms of his in-game coaching and decision-making and stuff than the other way around. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think being here for the last 20 years and watching, a series of different Panthers coaches. Yeah. I mean, it's why I got frustrated with Dave because we talked about this a lot in the offseason, that the idea of a playbook that could be up-tempo, that was going to be creative, that was going to use unique guys in unique positions, and we can get into this new running back.
Oh my God. Well, I was going to say, my only real beef with anything that happened on Sunday was the usage of all running backs.
Yeah.
In terms of who was used, when they were used, and how they were used at times. The pass game, great, no notes. The run game, what?
I even have to look up. I've forgotten the dude's name. Lauren and I just kept texting
I just called him the tiny man.
Yeah, we just kept texting each other. What the hell is going on with number 13? Because he
looked like a tiny, looking at him on the field. By the way, he Bryce was so that's what stuck out to me. I'm like, who is this guy that Bryce looks so much bigger than on the field?
Well, not only that, they didn't do anything to disguise when the ball was going to him because every time he was on the field, they threw his way every single time. And it just didn't quite make sense to me. Devin Tompkins, who had just been released by the Buccaneers, is the player's name.
Give his stats, Demetri. Give his height and weight, please.
Oh, okay. Hang on 1 second. Let me pull it back up. He is 5'8", 155.
155. There are dudes hitting him that weigh 100 or more pounds than him.
Lauren, if he gets hit at the line of scrimmage, there's a very good chance he's getting hit by someone more than twice his weight.
Like, that's probably why they would give it to him so far behind the line. So, like, those big old D tackles couldn't, like, sit on him and kill him. I was just worried for his life. I was legitimately concerned. I like
the concepts. I wish they had left him in there and gone to someone else so that defense wasn't teeing off on him by the second half every time he came into the ball game. That's what was happening.
But, like, yeah, between that and, like, look, I know you want to get Jonathan Brooks in there. I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
It's not the time right now. Like, it's not.
And if you're not overworking Chuba as it is, why do you need to
do that? And they weren't.
Yeah, exactly. I'm all for Brooks getting like 6 to 8 carries a game right now, the way you would have used Miles Sanders, weirdly, during that time that you didn't trust Bryce as much as you do right now. But now that maybe you overtrust Bryce, if you're going to run the ball with the guy, who has proven, like, Lauren, I would be surprised if he has had a negative play in the last 3 weeks. I'd be surprised if at any point he'd been tackled behind the line of scrimmage.
I can think of like one off the top of my head, and that's about it. And it's not many. And, I know, and that's with like, everybody knows what's happening and they're teeing off on him and everything else. And so, like, look, I wanted more Chuba. Like, I was like, listen, love what you're doing here.
Right.
I'm happy with what's happening, but I'm also like, where, like, they were doing this even when they weren't down. Like, they were down by like 7, or they were tired, or you know what I mean? And I'm like, you don't have to like just pass every play. I just thought it was impractical. And then they brought Brooks in, and I was losing my mind at every moment they brought Brooks in, not because they brought him in, but because it just felt like the wrong time.
Well, not only that, like, if you're going to bring in a guy who with Chuba should be a change of pace back, like Chuba should be your barrel ahead, take guys with him kind of runner, and Brooks should be the guy that works the outside. They were still running Brooks right up the middle. Why even bring him in? Why not let the guy who is better at doing that do that? And it goes back to my feeling of not just JC Horn, it's everybody. They kind of left this one on the table.
I agree. I think if they'd run Chuba more the way that they were before and mix that in a little more, I think it also, but I think he got a little panicky with the run game at times, because obviously the Chiefs have a great defense. They knew that they were going to do that. And they obviously, look, did they want the Panthers to beat them by Bryce Young having to throw it? 100%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But guess what? They almost did. It's joke's on you, idiots. No, I'm just kidding. But that's you also wear, like, look, the reason coaches say they want to run the ball a lot and stick with it is they don't just say this because it sounds cool. They say it because it exhausts the fuck out of an opposing defense. Sorry for all the swearing, but it made me mad. But they tire out and that's how they've used Chuba so well. I feel like is like, maybe there are some carries that go for 2 or 3 at first, but by the fourth quarter, like, he's ripping off 6, 7, 8 yards because the defense is getting more and more tired. Now, to be fair, they weren't on the field as much. This one, I felt like the Chiefs were on the field for all of eternity, but like, they weren't on the field as much to wear down, but you also have to stick with who you are. And I just feel like there was a lot of, like, sort of, to me, the emphasis on the passing overemphasis was like, you're neglecting kind of what got you here. And maybe something more could have been done, but that's really my biggest and only note.
So, about the Sports Podcast Festival. The next one of those is not happening until August, but we do have another event happening in January down at the Rialto. The Basketball Jones, starring our friend Bomani Jones, as well as members of the 09 UNC National Championship team, Ovius and Giglio, Rod Morrow, better known as Rodimus Prime, and it's all going to be hosted by Lauren Brownlow. And we have more folks that are going to be joining the show that we're going to announce closer to the date. But if you have a basketball fan in your life, if you love college basketball, it is a great Christmas present, tickets to the event. And if you're an OG fan subscriber, there is a discount code in your email. Tickets are available at the Rialto's website. Just go to the events page. It all happens January 31st. It is the Basketball Jones with our friend Bomani Jones. Get your tickets now at therialto.com. Lauren Brownlow, this is going to be the first game against the Buccaneers all season. It feels like this happened last year, too, where we played the Saints.
You've already played the Saints twice.
Yeah, I feel like this happened last year. It was the Falcons we had played twice, though. But I feel like we played both of the other teams right away and waited until week, like, double digits before we saw the Buccaneers for the first time.
Yeah, it's weird. Because in my Panthers fan heyday, I grew up with them being, the team I, was the most interested in facing for sure.
Because at the time, even though in the beginning of the NFC South, no one won it in back-to-back years, they were the team that, if they won it one year, they were definitely number 2 the next year because of that defense.
Yes, and like I love to hate them. Like it was way more fun to hate them than the Saints, who I just hated without like the respect or the LOLs that the Bucs always gave me. Affectionate LOLs.
Well, like I get it for 2 reasons. A, growing up a Buccaneers fan, maybe this is shaded in my mind, but you hate the Saints because of the fans, right? You hate the Buccaneers because of the players, and that makes it easier to not coach at times, purely hate. Oh no, I'm with you. I told
didn't like John Gruden at all.
I told Joe Ovius on OG on Business last week that I appreciate that he keeps Tony Dungy's Super Bowl ring warm, but he was absolutely the worst thing that ever happened to that franchise.
Yeah, I didn't like him. I didn't like Warren Sapp, but I was glad he was there, and I loved his back and forth with Brinson Buckner. Like that was a highlight, a legitimate highlight of my sports life was that. Yeah. Like their back and forth and their rivalry and all the shit that they would talk. And he was really good at it. And the Panthers had guys that were good at it too. And they were so good and hard to play against. And like, I knew it was always going to be a fight. One time during a Panthers Bucs game at Bank of America, a man with his family tried to fight me when I was in college. He wanted to, he had long hair and like a pirate chip on his forehead. I hope he painted that temporarily, but either way, like I was talking a little bit. But I didn't talk to him, but he took offense and exception and wanted to like climb over some seats. And I'm like, my guy, I'm like a 20-year-old girl, but have at it, I guess. Lauren, but it's just stuff like that. I love it.
You can take the boy out of Tampa. You can't take Tampa out of the boy. Okay. Let's talk about this current Buccaneers team. Are they good? I can't tell.
I don't know. I can't either.
Yeah, I mean, they are.
I will say, like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to real quick just give context to they are only a game behind the Falcons. It is not absurd to think they could end up winning this division. Now, I will point out they have lost both games they played with the Falcons this year. So to make up ground, you're going to have to actually overtake them. But the Bucs aren't bad. And this is part of my Baker Mayfield bias. Like, I just can't believe they're actually good.
Well, yeah, there's a little bit of that there for me. I think they're the team that for me on a week-to-week basis, I obviously watch the Panthers, but like when I see their results, I just go, huh. Yeah. Like, it's more like, how did that happen one way or the other? Where I'm like, that's interesting.
And look, some of how that happened is because they do have a pretty good defense. Like they've caused a lot of turnovers this year. Also, how does that happen? They hang on to the ball. They're 50% on third down conversions this year, which is huge in the NFL. They're not particularly explosive, but they're steady. Like they literally hang on to the ball for most of the game. Like it's the kind of thing where those little mistakes really can kill you against this team, not because they're so excellent, but because they just don't put themselves in position where mistakes can kill them.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say this, like, this is what I was going to say a minute ago. Baker Mayfield finding success, in his post-Panthers career bothers me far less than Sam Darnold's flirtation with it. Yes, mostly because I never thought Baker was a fraud. And I thought he was much more a victim of circumstances here.
Okay. I will tell you this. This will make you happy. As we are recording, the Vikings have decided that at the very least, they do not fully trust Sam Darnold. They have signed Daniel Jones, as you and I are talking. Right?
Why would you sign Sam Darnold but worse? And no offense to Daniel, it's just like essentially they're very similar in that they have some talent enough that tantalizes people and makes them go, ooh, we could make this something. And then they turn it over all the time in inexplicable ways that you go, oh, it's not going to be.
Right.
But
it doesn't
Daniel
matter how terrible you see a top 10 pick be. You believe he's not really that terrible.
Yeah, and no, like Sam the person seems fine. It's nothing about Sam the person. It's not even his fault. It's the way people talk about him. So it's the rhetoric around Sam Darnold. It's the discourse that enrages me, not him as a person. It's just like stop saying he's good. And with Baker, I always felt like people doubted him for reasons that had less to do with football. And so that always bothered me because I'd be like, but look at the actual football happening with this person and it's bad. And no one seems to care. And yet like, oh, because he is a little emotional, we're going to act like has no capability to be good. How about we look at the fact that this dude keeps throwing it to the other team a bunch of times? That would seem more concerning to me than a guy that like planted a flag on a logo or whatever the hell Baker did that upset people.
It is, I guess. And look, I don't want to take anything away from like Daniel Jones is just not a good quarterback. I never understood the high draft pick or anything like that.
No, literally never. And I covered him at Duke, and that's I get why people were tantalized. I do, but I always, even then, I was bro, what are you seeing?
Is what like,
why are you turning it over?
Is what you get just the speed? Because he doesn't seem to make very good decisions either.
The decisions are the part that was like, that was to me the part that I'm like, yeah, but like he doesn't do the right. Yeah, exactly. It's whether it's turning it over or just like, yes, the decision making in general. I never got
I don't want to devalue the Panthers win over the Giants because it's one of only 3. But like, what an unserious cartoon character of a franchise that organization has become to give the guy with the crazy Italian agent the starting job because he's fun and everybody likes him. Like literally one of the worst NFL quarterbacks I have ever seen in my life, Tommy DeVito.
It's like, well, not when what's his name exists. Why am I forgetting his name?
Nathan Peterman.
Thank you. God, I was going to say that Nathan Peterman still exists, but I'll give you that. Yeah.
As I was having this conversation with Bomani this week, because we were talking about Peterman, and I said that like Peterman has the moment, right, where he had like 5 interceptions and a half. But Tommy DeVito has like, he gets on the field and you wonder how on earth did you convince anyone to give you money to be here? I mean, I know that you would say the same thing about Peterman, but Peterman has a moment. Tommy DeVito just has jack shit in terms of ability. He's just Italian.
I wish if I had power, like real power in life.
Yeah.
And I think you'd be on board with this. I think we have to find like the shittiest college quarterback we can find.
Yeah.
And get the right few people to start talking them up.
Right.
And see who's the worst quarterback we can get NFL people to buy is actually good.
Well, during the preseason, like Joe Giglio and I were laughing at the possibility that someone in New England was going to convince themselves that Joe Milton was ready to be an NFL quarterback after they drafted. I think they signed him as an undrafted free agent. But
well, that's different. That's an undrafted. I'm talking about the guys that they'll draft, and you're like,
sure.
What?
Yeah,
like Peterman was a draft pick from what I remember.
A late one, but yes, you are right. He was like a 5th or 6th round.
Which I was like, what the hell is this? When it happened even. I'm like, what? Right. Why? So there are times where I feel like NFL guys legit don't watch. Like it has to be someone with the physical ability. Mm-hmm. Like Carson Wentz is going to be that way for somebody. Like it's so shiny in the box. It came from Georgia. Ooh, it looks so pretty. Okay.
You mean Carson Beck, right?
Oh God, yes.
Okay.
My brain's not working today. Yes, thank you. Carson Wentz is already. Yeah.
Let's get out of here on speaking of brain not working. I think we have used a lot of Joe Person's reporting from The Athletic. We think very highly of Joe as someone that covers the Carolina Panthers, but Joe Person's pretty convinced that SteveWilks is going to get at least a look at UNC now that the Tar Heels have fired Mac Brown, and it's because guys like Trey Boston and Julius Peppers would advocate for him if he wanted it. He is back in the North Carolina area. He was a grad assistant or not a grad assistant, I'm sorry, a volunteer assistant at Charlotte this past year. Lauren, I have been doing radio
a volunteer?
The last couple days. Yes. I've been doing radio the last couple days in the SEC footprint, talking to people about the UNC opening. You and I texted back and forth about this a little bit yesterday. This would be, I think, the absolute picture of what people need to understand when they talk about UNC being a sleeping giant. There's just no want to there. Like, if you are going to hire SteveWilks or seriously entertain this, it's because you just don't care what happens to your football program. And that's okay. Just don't tell me it's not the case.
Right. Yeah, they won't do that because they don't fire Mac in this situation, considering like where college football is right now, if they don't want to make a hire that they think will markedly improve things. Otherwise, you don't do that because you just leave it the way it is. Because why wouldn't you?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like at this point, like, why wouldn't you just leave it the way it is? So this is and I'm not, look, NFL, to me, that's a little bit of a case of NFL people at times. And I don't blame them. I get it. But at times, I think they feel like they can dive back into college football and like there are way more nuances at play and like things going on at every individual school, not just Carolina, but like that people don't often get. And like, and even in the college versus the pro game, like I love SteveWilks. I think he'd be a terrific NFL coach. I don't look at him and go, oh, he'd be a great college coach. I would never think that. Like, no offense to Steve, but right? Like, why would you think that?
Yeah. I would also point this out. Where did I just say he was a volunteer coach this year?
Charlotte?
Don't they have a job opening? Why wouldn't that be who takes a look at Steve?
To me, that actually would make a lot more sense. And like when you were like Panthers Steve, you could have said Steve Smith and I would have heard you out a little bit quicker than SteveWilks. And that's no shade to Steve. That's no shade to Wilks. Like, it's literally just like, it just doesn't work for me on that level for a lot of reasons. But that's what I mean. That's why you can fool the NFL draft people, because they don't watch. They're not ingrained in the college football as much as like people like us are. So they don't know, all of those things. They just watch like highlight tape. They don't know that Nathan Peterman sucks. Like they're like, wow, he can throw it 70 yards. It's like, yeah. Did you see that time they had like.
They don't even know enough to know, like, to look at Nathan Peterman and go, oh, Pitt quarterback. No, we're not doing that. Like, they don't even know that much. They know Ohio State quarterbacks have a bad track record, but they don't know enough to look at a program and go, oh, they never throw the ball. So, of course, the one or two times he looked excellent. He's well rested right there.
Well, sure. Yeah. No, I know. But it's like, or when he did throw the ball, wow, he really threw to the other guy. That's crazy. A lot. But yeah, it's like there's just a lot of like nuanced stuff that I feel like they don't necessarily get. If by the way, if they were, I heard this name brought up the other day and I was like, ooh, I doubt he would do this, because why would you? Yeah. But like when somebody brought up Jeff Monken, and I was like, oh, that would be a fantastic if they could get it. Like, why would he do that? Right. But like at the same time, it's like that would be like a home run if they could get him.
I don't believe there is a home run for UNC. I just think there's a level
all relative,
of resource dedication you're never getting. Well, no. I mean, like, I think you only get rid of Matt because you're embarrassed at this point. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
We don't have to go into detail about the UNC job necessarily. However, I will say this. They understand what college football's reality is right now. And they also, or in college sports in general, they understand that if they want to remain what is said to be a desirable product for any kind of super league that may or may not form, they got to get the football in more serious shape. They've got to at least try.